Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Creative Katie. Today we are going to create a beautiful art journal page one step at a time. Now today I'm going to be working with this beautiful fall flowers napkin, but it's got a dark background. And how do you work with those? They've always troubled me, and I'm going to give you some clues. Now normally you take off the plies and you water cut the elements that you want, and you do that with a little bit of water on a liner brush like you see me doing here. Now the problem with the dark backgrounds is they seem to be tougher. They don't, the paper doesn't come off as easily, maybe because there's more dye there with the darker color, and it's really hard to get out all of that dark background color, as you can see here. And I've water cut hundreds of napkins, and I'm really struggling to get that blue out, and there's all of that. So here's what I recommend when you're dealing with a napkin that has a dark background and you want to harvest some of those elements. I'm just rough cutting it out, and I'm going to glue it down with fluid matte medium onto a piece of copy paper. This could be recycled paper. There could be words on the back if you want. I'm just gluing it down, putting some fluid matte medium on top as well, just sealing it down. Then, once everything's dry, you're simply going to fussy cut it out. And this way you can remove all of that background color that's dark. Now, if I was going to have a blue background, which interestingly enough I end up with here, taking out the blue isn't so necessary. But at this point, I didn't know that my background was going to be blue. But if your background was going to be lighter, that little bits of blue may distract and detract from your finished project. So that's what I would do with elements from a napkin that has a dark background. Now once you have the elements cut out, like these beautiful sunflowers, I just love the size of them, the vibrancy of them, then you can play with them on your various substrates. This is a 7x10 mixed media page, and I'm just playing with what I might want to do with them. Layer them up, stick them in a corner. Then I looked across the table and I had this peacock that I believe I got from supercoloring.com. I blew it up, I made it bigger on my printer, and I'm going to make the flowers be the tail of the peacock. Slightly thinking outside the box because, well, these aren't typically peacock feather colors. But I like the idea of doing it, and I'm trying it this way, and I'm just playing with the elements that I have little by little, turning it landscape, turning it vertical, just seeing which way I like it better. So again, that napkin came from Ninny's Napkins. It's called Fall Flowers, and if you're looking for some vibrant sunflowers, this is the one. So for the background, I decided to go with red and blue with some yellow highlights. These are colors that I got right from that napkin. So don't be afraid to take your direction from what other artists have done. So here I'm mixing up mainly Prussian blue, and I believe it's alizarin crimson. I'm making some purple, and you can see I am not being picky. I want all this variation. I want it messy. This is just the first layer of color. Now with this art journal page, I've started with the focal image, and then I've picked the background colors to go with it. And that's one way to go. So here I'm just lining this up. I'm liking the way those sunflowers pop against that dark background. But I want to add some of that yellow in there. So I grab my yellow oxide and I'm going, and this sink liner, that's what you see on the right hand side. I'm braying on that yellow oxide and I'm going to use this as a stamp. It's going to be grungy, good, and it's just going to add just the right amount of color, of that yellow color, into the background, and it just really grunges it up. So don't be afraid to use your own mark makers. You don't need to buy stamps for this. You can use stamps, but sink liners, shelf liners make wonderful mark makers. And the best part, this is a silicone shelf liner or sink liner, it just washes off easily. Loving the look of this. Of course, you know, I am not a neat crafter. Look at my hands. I've got the paint everywhere. But I'm having fun. And that's what really matters. I grabbed this knitted stitching stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. And the reason I grabbed the shelf or that sink liner and this stencil is the motif, the design on it, reads well with the sunflowers. There's a relationship there. So when I am putting together marks, that's what I look for, to see that there's something that works together. So I'm pushing back all that first layer of color. Now I grabbed my script stamp and I'm using the red paint and I'm stamping some of that script, getting some smaller patterning texture into the background. In the end, I'm just loving this background. It's grungy goodness. But doing the background is really the quickest part, and it's the most fun. And of course, I am drawing in between layers, but you don't need to watch me hold a heat tool. Look at that. Nothing wrong with that. Then I've splattered it with white. And I know that later I'm going to put a sentiment on and there's going to be some white there. There's also white going to be on the peacock body. So I wanted a little bit of white in the background. Now, in blowing this up, the peacock, it got very, very faded. I think I need some more ink in my printer as well. But I'm just showing, I've rough cut it out. Those little bits in between and the harder bits, I use an X-Acto knife. I find that really easy to use and far quicker than fussy cutting with scissors. But you do you. If you like fussy cutting, you can do it that way. As I said, I think this printable came from supercoloring.com. You may want to go check it out. I get a lot of printables that I use on my art journal pages from that site. Now, because it's faded, I am just taking some black acrylic paint and darkening up the areas that are black. I'm going to leave the wing white there that we're going to see, and then the eye will also be white. But everything else I'm just going to make a little bit darker. Now I got the idea of using the flowers to build the tail of this because I've seen lots of art journal pages where there's a girl's face and they use the flowers in the hair, or you use the flowers in butterfly wings, and this is just an extension of that, just another application of it. Now I'm looking for a sentiment, and I went to one of my very first sentiment packs, the BU sentiment pack. And there are lots. Beauty begins when you begin to be yourself. Don't be afraid to show your true colors would be a good one. Why fit in when you're born to stand out? That would all go with this peacock with a very different color plumage. This is the one that I am going to end up using. They laugh at me because I'm different. I laugh at them because they're all the same. Never apologize for who you are. No one is you. That's your superpower. So all of those will work really, really well. And if you're looking for a good sentiment pack, this might be the one. All my digital sentiment packs are sold at NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There's a link in the description box below. So now I'm just cutting out excess white. I don't want the big block of it. So I'm getting rid of as much of the white as I can. And then I'm going to play around with where I want or how I want the sentiment to work. You can cut up your sentiments as much as possible or as much as you want, or leave them in bigger chunks. It's a personal choice, and sometimes that choice is made only when I get to this stage. I do cut off a little bit more of the white off camera. But once I have an idea of where everything goes, I grab my matte gel and I'm gluing it down. And I'm glad I grabbed matte gel instead of the fluid, because those sunflowers are two layers. There's the napkin and the copy paper. And I find that gel medium works a little bit better. And I'm starting with what's underneath first and layering up. I just love, love, love the vibrancy of those sunflowers. I have several more of this napkin, and I will be harvesting the sunflowers from it and using it on other pages in other ways. It's just such a beautiful image. Whenever I'm gluing things down, I always make sure I put a good coat on top, and that seals the copy paper and turns it into a non-porous surface, which allows me to shade on top of it, add color on top of it. If I make a mistake, it'll also allow me to very quickly use a baby wipe and erase what I did if I don't like something. Now to cut off, instead of going on the front, turn it upside down and cut off the excess. Always easier. You can see right where the edge is. Now the peacock, because the body is dark and it's such a dark background, instead of shading with black, I am going to highlight with white, and that is going to make the peacock body head stand out. And you can see how that's happening right now. I do admit I was a little bit worried that you were not really going to see the body of the peacock, but By highlighting it with the white right here, it just totally made it pop and stand out from that dark background. And I'm adding more, I'm letting it dry in between. Just building it up, and you can see how the peacock now stands out from the background. So I'm just going to speed up the video right now, just building it up, adding a little bit more. And then I'm doing the same around the edge of the page. And I go with the white around the sentiment as well. I do add a little bit of black around the edge. I wasn't sure, do I want to leave it with white or do I want it black? Then with the black, I'm adding some shading to the sunflower petals. I just really want them to be even more vibrant and stand out against the background. Just adding definition to the petals. There, I got somewhere I didn't want, but because I had coated it with matte medium, I was able to erase it. Then I want it to intensify the color of the sunflowers, especially that burnt sienna part. So I just grab some reds and orange and rub on top, just deepening the color. That particular sunflower didn't have any of the orange in it, and so I just added it in, made it my own. But you always, again, you want it to seal it with the matte medium or clear gesso so that you can put the color on. It just doesn't wick into the raw napkin. I'm dotting the eye with the stylus and some black acrylic paint, and then I'm using the stylus and putting a whole bunch of dots in the center of the sunflower. Adding a little bit of texture, a little bit of pattern in a very, very subtle way. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to hit the subscribe button, click on the bell, so that you'll be notified of upcoming videos. Here I'm adding white around the sentiment, but I didn't take time to dry the stylus dots on the sunflower, so I'm trying to avoid putting my hand in it and smearing it. I do give up in a bit and dry it. Again, there, I've got the dryer going as I'm doing it. Sometimes my impatience gets the better of me and causes me problems. Hands up if that's you too. Here I'm adding a little more black to the side because of my indecision of whether it should be black or white. I'm heating up the tape before I remove it. That just releases the glue so I don't rip more paper. And here we have the finished page. Love, love, love the vibrancy of the colors. This color scheme just that I borrowed from the napkin. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, go get creative.